I have traveled this road hundreds of times, and I'm sure I will travel it at least 100 times more in my lifetime. This is US Highway 70, designated by the Arizona Department of Transportation as the Old West Highway. It's a desert road that's an easy route, even with its twists and turns. I love to watch the beauty of the landscape change as every mile goes by. We're following a 31-mile stretch of the Old West Highway between Solomon, Arizona and Duncan, Arizona, once known as the Gila River Trail. Heading east from Solomon in Graham County, the highway leaves the Gila River Valley and winds through desert hills until once again it runs parallel to the river through Duncan in Greenlee County, about 5 miles away from the New Mexico state line. The Gila River is one of the longest rivers west of the Continental Divide. It begins in the Gila Wilderness in New Mexico and covers over 650 miles through the Arizona desert until it meets the Colorado River at the California-Arizona border. Over 15,000 years ago, megafauna lived on this land. Fossil remains of prehistoric horses, Columbian mammoths, camels, giant ground sloths, flat-headed peccary, giant capybara, and bison have been found in Greenlee County. Artifacts such as arrowheads, pottery, and cave paintings show evidence of prehistoric cultures living along the river. The desert archaic people, Anasazi and Mogollon, occupied Arizona. As early as 1400 AD, Athapascan people, Navajo, and Apaches arrived in this region. The Apaches were hunters, gatherers, and the dominant force along the river. Apaches lived throughout the Southwest. Their homeland included what is now central Arizona to the Rio Grande, and from northern Mexico to the high plains of southeastern Colorado. Spanish conquistadors and priests first came to the Southwest to spread the Catholic faith, search for mineral wealth, and claim the land for Spain in 1541. Artifacts have been found from garrison camps from the expedition of Francisco Vázquez de Coronado. In 1598, Juan de Oñate established the first colonies for Spain, following the rumors of mineral wealth in the mountains. In 1821, Mexico fought for independence from Spain and established the first Mexican Republic. The Republic of Mexico extended as far north as current-day Wyoming and east to Texas. The trail along the Gila River was used by a small group of trappers when this region of the country belonged to Mexico. The trappers had received permission from the Mexican provincial government to trap beavers along the Gila River in 1824. This same trail was used by the Army of the West and the Mormon Battalion in 1846. The U.S. Congress declared war on Mexico in an effort to acquire more land for westward expansion. The region was taken by the United States under the terms of the 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. 8 years later, in 1856, copper and other minerals were discovered in the Clifton area, 28 miles north of Duncan. The Apache Wars began after U.S. Army Lieutenant Bascom falsely accused Chiricahua Chief Cochise of abducting a boy. War erupted in 1860, a year before the American Civil War, and lasted for 26 long years. At the start of the Civil War, what is now the states of Arizona and New Mexico were one New Mexico territory. Politically, the territory was splitting apart, with the northern part of the territory staying loyal to the Union. Residents of the southern part of the territory established themselves as the Arizona Territory, which was briefly claimed by the Confederate States of America. The westernmost battle of the Civil War took place in southern Arizona at the Battle of Picacho Pass west of Tucson. The battle was waged on April 15, 1862, involving 13 California Union cavalrymen and 10 Arizona Confederate Rangers. Later in the spring of 1862, Union forces defeated an attempt by Confederate troops to seize the New Mexico Territory. U.S. Congress established the Arizona Territory, purposefully drawing boundary between Arizona and New Mexico north to south. The new Arizona would be established as a separate territory by President Lincoln on February 24, 1863. The American Civil War ended in 1865. Settlers began living in the Duncan area along the Gila River and farming the land as early as 1870. Originally, the town was a way station on an ore haulage rail line that served to link the copper mines in Clifton with Silver City, New Mexico. In 1872, Chief Cochise surrendered, but resisted the transfer of his people out of Arizona to the Tularosa Reservation in New Mexico. U.S. Congress established the San Carlos Indian Reservation in an effort to hold captured Apaches and restrict tribal members to the reservations. Cochise died in 1874, 9 years after the end of the American Civil War. The Apache Wars would continue for another 12 years. In 1880, the Gila River Trail became a stagecoach line and was eventually used by Anglo settlers. When the Arizona Copper Company was formed near Clifton, the Copper Company built a narrow-gauge railway from Clifton through Duncan to Lordsburg, New Mexico, to meet the Southern Pacific Railroad that ran from Louisiana to the West Coast. The town of Duncan was formally established in 1883 and named after Duncan Smith, the managing director of Arizona Copper Company. In the late 1800s, roughly 500,000 foreigners became American immigrants every year, and in 1903, Ford built the first Model A. The advent of automobiles and trucks encouraged more families to move west. With the railroad, ranching, and farming of the fertile, easily irrigated soil, the Duncan Valley boomed. Arizona had remained a U.S. territory for 49 years. President William Howard Taft signed Arizona into the Union, and Arizona became a state on February 14, 1912. The Gila River Trail began to get much-needed improvement, such as drainage and grading. In 1936, the Gila River Trail was assigned the status of United States Highway 70. Paving had been completed in 1932, and US 70 was commissioned to be a section of transcontinental highway that linked the Atlantic to the Pacific, connecting it with other numbered highways for a total of 2,385 miles from North Carolina to California. In 1941, heavy rain showers fell on the upper Gila River, flooding Duncan. A large part of the residential areas and farmlands were damaged along the river. Again, in 1949, warm rains caused melting snow runoff, which resulted in minor floods along the Gila River. According to the 1950 census, Duncan had its highest recorded population at 941 people. This did not include the outlying communities of Franklin and York. In the 1970s, Interstate 10 was completed, 35 miles south of Duncan. The town of Duncan had prospered until this time. Commercial traffic was diverted away from Highway 70 to the interstate route. Duncan soon became a quiet farming and ranching town off the beaten path. More flooding occurred in October 1972 when tropical moisture caused heavy rains over most of the state. Duncan suffered heavy losses due to flooding. The agricultural losses in Greenlee County were estimated to be $2 million. And again in December of 1978, almost every major river in Arizona overflowed its banks. Waters from the Gila River were 7 feet deep in the town of Duncan. That year, a dike along the river broke and 75 homes were destroyed. In 1983, 100 years after the town of Duncan was founded, the worst tropical storm ever to hit Arizona came off the coast of Baja California. Torrential rains and destructive flooding occurred over the southeast quarter of the state. People were cut off from help because roads, bridges, phones, and electric lines were washed away. New water flow records were set on the San Francisco River at Clifton with an estimated 125 cubic feet per second. The Duncan Valley received extensive damage to cotton crops, and much of the rich topsoil was washed away. Irrigation canals and ditches, wells, livestock, and machinery were badly damaged. This was recorded as Arizona's most destructive flood, and it was the 7th major flood to occur in the last 6 years. Ten years later, on January of 1993, Duncan was hit again. Half the town was underwater when a dike along the Gila broke and left more than 150 people homeless. Farmland was flooded, and 98 miles down the river, water flowed over the Coolidge Dam spillway for the first time since it was built in 1930. The 2020 census reported the town of Duncan population of 694 people. Most are third or fourth generation residents, some still farming and ranching the land. Some residents are employed at the copper mine near Clifton, Arizona, which is now the leading copper producing mine in North America. The Gila River Trail holds many different stories. Traveling this highway can be a journey into the history and the secrets of the desert Southwest. We may travel this road hundreds of times in our lifetime, but we only pass through this land for a moment in time.